Hey everybody, welcome to our Girl Talk class on how to balance your hormones. I am super excited that you're all here tonight. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I can't wait to dive in and talk about something that can be somewhat of a hot topic. We're going to talk a little bit about PMS, about weight gain, about sex, about all the things that we all struggle with in one way or another, but that we don't always talk about. So this is the place to do it. Even though it feels like I'm talking to myself, it's all good. I want somebody at some point, maybe at the end when I stop recording, to turn the video on and show your faces. Okay, so before we jump in here, I wanted to first give you a little bit of a background and an understanding about where I'm coming from, because that's really important. Hey, Emily, I see a face, I know. Hi. That makes things easier. And this is really an invitation for you to feel like you now have permission to take care of yourself. And I think the first step in all of that is showing up tonight, was maybe signing up for the class. Spending that $15 on a class may have felt like an investment for you, even though it's not a ton of money. It's something, and it got you here, and it had some accountability attached to it. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that you've taken the time out of your night, that you've carved time in your schedule away from your family. Maybe you got a sitter. And this is for you. This is something that you can do for yourself to be more aware and cognizant of the things that you are doing on a daily basis that you don't know are affecting your hormones. So once again, this is permission for you to take care of yourself. Let's just start there. Square one. Hormones. Now, in my actual class that I do on this, I pass out a little quiz, and I have everybody take a hormone quiz based on some variations of different questions associated with how we store fat, what we think our different triggers may be for stress and hormonal imbalance. And so we're going to kind of get into a little bit of that. So I'm going to have to use this chat section over here for some feedback as we go along. But in and of itself, what are hormones? We're going to start there. Square one. What are hormones? Maybe you know, maybe you have no idea. But hormones are this really amazing functional system in our body. It's like little members or little army, and they communicate with all the different systems in your body. And they actually dictate how you function, how you eat, how you sleep, how you gain weight, how you treat people, right? All your different mood fluctuations are determined by your hormones. And I think that's really powerful to think about, because if it's determining all these different things, are you really paying attention to how it's affecting those areas of your life? Things like sleep and our stress levels and how much sugar we're eating. All of these things play a huge role in how we feel, but a lot of times we don't think real deeply about what it is that we're actually doing to our body to make these huge hormonal changes in our body. So as it says here, hormones do affect every single part of our life. These are some frequently asked questions that I get from people, whether online or in-person classes. And I'm just going to go through these because I kind of want you to have, as I mentioned in the email, just jot down some notes here. If there are some things that stick out to you or some questions that you feel I didn't answer by the end, I want you to feel comfortable enough to ask them. And these are some of the ones that come up most often. Things like, how do I stop feeling tired all the time? What can I do to end those 2 painful weeks during and before my cycle? What should I eat to not be so bloated or to stop that fluid retention and have better digestion? How can I lose some of that stubborn body fat without starving myself? That's a huge one. And how do I get rid of the hormonal migraines? Maybe you get that like right before your period or during your period. Mood swings or cramps. And what can I do about sugar cravings? That's a big one we're going to talk about today. And how can I get rid of the hormonal acne or different skin problems? Maybe you have dry scalp or brittle hair. How can I reduce stress and boost my energy as well as increase my focus? And how can I live healthy with a busy schedule? That's probably question number one. How can you incorporate all of this when you are either a busy working woman, maybe you're a busy mom, or maybe a busy working mom? All of those things. Like so many of you, I have tried everything. Okay. When I was at my rock bottom, when I hit sort of my biggest valley, if you will, I had spent all the money I could on every single over-the-counter acne medication, every medication from the doctor that they could give me that could help with my acne. I was on Accutane. I spent $400 on this 1 month's worth of facial regimen. I mean, who does that? Maybe you have. Maybe you're just like me. But if you are just like me, then I think this class is really going to resonate with you, because I was suffering from things like fat storage, like an extra 30 pounds that I just could not rid myself of. And that was even before I had kids and after, but before was even worse. And my acne was really, really bad. I lived for a period of my life overseas in Italy. And while I was there, I was just hoping and praying that no one would see it, when it was the first thing that they would say. If you've ever met a European, they're like so blunt and so forward about everything. And so they would say, like, have you seen a doctor about that? Like, you got something right here, right? Or they try to give me some sort of concealer to put over my acne, when inside I knew exactly what I looked like, and it was really painful. It was underneath the skin and it hurt. I would get them on my scalp and on my neck and my back and my chest. And I think the thing that people disregard most often is they just assume that if you have this symptom, that you're a person that's always going to have that. Like, how many times have you said to yourself, like, we wake up in the morning and you're tired. I'm just a person that wakes up and I feel tired every day. Or you have a sweet tooth craving at the end of the day and you're like, I just always have that. I'm a person that always wants a dessert after dinner. Or you categorize yourself in some pigeonhole and decide that's who you are based on your life experience. But if you step away from that, especially coming from a nutritionist background now, I want you to understand that I see things so differently now, that it's crystal clear to me that there are things we're doing every single day that are actually harming our bodies when we think we're doing good to them. There are so many different protein shakes and supplements out there, and different things you can get from Target and Costco, these stores that we trust and love, that are actually causing us harm. And one of the things you're going to hear me talk about a lot tonight is this word called endocrine disruptors. That's something that a lot of people in their everyday life probably never hear. But in my field of work, we talk about this a lot. Endocrine disruptors can be anything. First of all, what's your endocrine system? Your endocrine system lies just beneath the tissues of the skin, and it's what helps regulate your hormones. Okay, so when you disrupt that, your body has a visceral reaction. Some of the disruptors are common. Things like pesticides that are saturated in the foods that we consume, whether it's regular foods or organic foods, because there are high levels of pesticides even in organic foods, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But some of the other toxic ingredients that you're taking in every day are different synthetic fragrances and aromas from things like perfume, plug-ins, candles, different carcinogens that are being released in the air that are affecting not only your endocrine system and your hormone levels, but also your respiratory system. Maybe your kids have a chronic respiratory infection, or they're always stuffy headed, or they have itchy eyes. Think about the environment that they're living in. Think about the things that are contributing and the factors in your home that could be playing a part on how they feel. So as we talk about this today, as we talk about endocrine disruptors, I want you to kind of focus in and think introverted. Think about yourself. What does your environment look like? Whether it's your work environment, your home environment, your church environment, where are the places you spend the most time that may have these endocrine disruptors that are contributing to how you feel? As I mentioned before, I hit a rock bottom, and I'm showing you this picture not with the intention to talk about weight, although that is a very good side benefit of living healthy and eating better and taking care of myself. But I'm showing you this picture because I know that girl. She was sad. She was depressed. I would say no to things that I loved to do because of how I felt about myself, because of how I felt about my skin. And my constant bloating. I always felt bloated after I ate my food. And I felt this fogginess in my brain, like my brain wasn't connecting anymore with the words coming out of my mouth, that I would say things or do things that were out of character for me. Or I just had the worst PMS. My mood fluctuation was just up and down, up and down. This was in a time that my husband and I were trying to have kids, and I could not get pregnant. And when I did, I could not stay pregnant. And so there were all these things in my life that were contributing to how I felt. And so I'm showing you this to show you that I've been there. If this is you, or if this is you in the past, or if you know someone like this, that you and they are not alone. So now this is a list, and you can take a picture of this if you want, but this right here is a list of different symptoms that could be contributing to your hormonal imbalance. So I want you to take a look at this. Like I said, you can take a picture of it, but in the chat, I want you to write your name down if you have 10 or more of these that you are suffering from. Okay, so read through that list. I'll give you a minute. This is a no judgment zone. Just know that. You are free to be you in this space. Couple people, 3 so far. Okay. Now, whether or not you identify with all the things on this list, surely there are some of you who have at least 5. So if you have 5 that you've identified with, write your name down in the chat. Okay. Okay, now the reason we take a look at that list is because there are things that are triggers in your life every single day that are contributing to those symptoms. Those are just things that we look at and that we feel and that bother us. But if you stop to think about it, when you have like a check engine light going in your car and it's blinking, blink, 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 and every time you get in, you're like, dang it, okay, I need to call the mechanic. I got to get my car in. And you don't put it off too long because you know that if you do, you're not going to be able to drive your car, and you're not going to be able to get your kids to school, or you're not going to be able to get to work or whatever. And do you just take like a piece of tape and put it over the blinking light to cover it up because you're like, oh, I won't see it that way, so it'll go away? That's what you're doing right now with your health. People every single day fall into this trap of, I have bags under my eyes, so I'm going to go buy concealer and I'm going to put this concealer on. It's going to fix the problem, right? They want a quick fix. Or I feel like I have low energy, so I'm going to drink a coffee or caffeine, Coke, whatever it is, every day to boost my energy. They don't think about like, why am I tired every day? They just know that they want to resolve that problem right now. And so instead of getting to the root cause and going to an engineer and figuring it out, they're just taking that piece of tape and putting it over the blinking light. And what I want to say to you is that people are capitalizing on your pain and suffering every day. If there's a commercial about it, about that product that you're using, then you know that they're capitalizing on your pain and your suffering. Okay, so if you see something on TV, or you see an advertisement, or you see something even on social media, right, that's like, this is going to solve X, Y, and Z, but it's not getting to the root cause, they are capitalizing on your pain and suffering. And that's not okay. From a perspective of someone who's, heart-centered and a woman and a mother, I say save your money. And I am actually like one of the first people to fall trap into like these infomercials for things in my life to make my life easier. Things like, vacuums and shopping, whatever, all this stuff like that. Like, I get excited about that. But when it comes to my health, I want to know what it is that's causing all this angst and these problems that are surfacing and making me feel terrible and worse every day. So now that you know you have to get to the root cause of the problem, there are two questions I'm going to ask you. The first one is, where do you tend to store fat? Okay, and we're going to talk about this for a little bit, and then the second one will come up in just a minute. But where do you tend to store fat? There are 3 areas of the body where you tend to store fat, where women tend to store fat. Fat storage is a key identifier to certain particular hormonal imbalances. The first one is called estrogen dominance. Okay, now if this is you, if you have a pear shape, so you have weight gain in your upper legs, butt, and hips, I want you to take a picture of this, okay? So this is someone with a typical pear-shaped body. This is a woman who has high estrogen and low progesterone. We need to have a nice balance of the two. High estrogen oftentimes comes from these endocrine disruptors that we talked about before. Endocrine disruptors from red meat, okay, hormones there's even a lot of hormone in different fish that you can buy. Lots of different hormone disruptors within the foods that you're eating. So I try really hard to avoid those in my refrigerator because I don't want to have that waste going through my body. We'll talk about the liver in just a minute and how it's unable to process a lot of those hormones. So high estrogen level and estrogen dominance leads to these things. Okay, so some of the symptoms that you may be suffering from is PMS, painful breasts, especially when you're ovulating, agitation and irritability, mood swings, depressive feelings, tension, even like within your neck and your body, confusion or anxiousness, hormonal migraines, water retention in your ankles and belly, weight gain, heavy, painful, or irregular periods, fertility problems, tiredness, and irregular sleep patterns. Now, if estrogen dominance is not taken care of, these are things that can occur over time. Endometriosis, fibroids, less stress resilience, hormone-related cancers, and metabolic syndrome. So I don't want you to get this information and feel like I'm fear-mongering because that's never my mission. My mission is to help you become more aware of some of the things that are causing these symptoms in you and trying to avoid the triggers and really getting down to business. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But if this is you, take note of this, and we're going to move on to the other two. So if you store fat in your belly button area, so underneath your belly button or your love handles, then you suffer from high cortisol. Now, this one is even more serious in my book. The amygdala in your brain, which is like right back here. I don't know if you can even see me. Some of you are probably on the phone and thinking, what is she pointing to? Like kind of like lower right cranial behind the ear, right ear. The amygdala is what releases that cortisol. That's our fight or flight part of the brain. And in women, the female brain is so incredible. I actually just watched this most amazing documentary called The Female Brain. So I highly suggest it. I think it's on Netflix, but I watched it on a plane and I was mesmerized the whole time. I think the people next to me were like, what is she watching? Because I was like up close to the screen. I loved it so much. But they talked specifically about how when we have this cortisol, heightened moment of cortisol, so we have a cortisol strike, not a strike, like what's the word I'm thinking of, Emily? Rise. I can only think of the word in Italian. A cortisol spike. There we go. A spike in our cortisol. It actually takes up to 12 hours for that to come back down. And within fight or flight mode, that's when our body stores most of its fat. So let me give you an example of a high cortisol moment. For me, for you, it may look different. Okay. But for me, if somebody knocks on my door and they haven't told me they're coming over, like immediately I have this visceral reaction in my body that's like, ooh, like I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm like, my house looks like crap, my kids' stuff is everywhere, does it smell like poopy diapers? Like I start to freak out. So that's me. And so for the next 12 hours, my body is storing fat. Okay, so how do we balance that? And the only way to truly do that is by getting out there and burning fat. So when you have a strike in your cortisol, or what did I call it? A strike? I can't even remember the word. Spike. Oh my gosh, Lena. Sorry, my brain. A spike in our cortisol, you have to get out there and start moving your body. Okay, you got to get out there and like do a 30-minute walk, get your heart rate up. Maybe you go up and down the stairs if it's the winter time. You can get on the floor and do some push-ups or sit-ups or some sort of HIIT training, high interval training, use some weights. As long as you're burning calories during that cortisol spike, you won't store fat, okay? But if you take that cortisol spike and then what's the first thing you're going to crave? Sugar, because sugar helps us to steal progesterone from the cells in our body and produce more estrogen dominance. It's a whole cycle. We're going to talk about the domino effect in just a minute. But what I want you to understand is if you have high cortisol, these are the different symptoms. You wake up feeling tired, you're extra anxious, you're emotionally drained, you can't rid yourself of stubborn fat, you have digestive issues, headaches, hair loss, irritability, low sex drive, that's huge, and sugar cravings. Okay, why do you have a low sex drive? Because your testosterone is being taken away, right? When you have high cortisol levels, it steals from the progesterone, which steals from the testosterone. So if you have no testosterone, then you don't have the sex hormone. That's why men have it. And they have it in abundance because they have more testosterone than we do. So if any of that applies to you, over time, the consequences will be adrenal burnout, high blood pressure, hypertension, irritable bowel syndrome, heartburn, low immune function, so you're getting sick all the time. There's actually a shrinking of your prefrontal cortex of your brain. They've showed that women who are constantly in combat, like whether it's, they live in a country or an environment or a community that they're always in a stressful scenario, or maybe they're in a profession that their cortisol levels are always spiked, then the studies have shown that it actually shrinks the frontal cortex of the brain. There's a loss of synaptic connections between neurons and hippocampus, which just means that your wires are misfiring. You get different cardiovascular diseases, diabetes. Diabetes is a huge one we'll talk about in just a second on the next slide. You're not able to burn fat anymore because you're storing fat in the cortisol stage. Accelerated aging, so premature wrinkles and gray hair, mental distress, and things like depression and Alzheimer's. So you'll be more prone to those things if you're constantly in a state of high cortisol. Okay, last one. If that wasn't you or the other one wasn't you, then you most likely fit in this category. You have love handles or you have fat between the shoulders, more of like an apple shape. Okay, so high insulin is super, super dangerous. This is the one that over the last 15 years, diabetes has increased by something like 350%. And by 2035, there will be over 300 million people with diabetes in the world. And so that's a high number, especially coming from where we were before. And this is an epidemic internationally, but if you look at how it sort of disperses itself across the world, you'll see that it's very much concentrated within the United States. And a lot of that has to do with the processed sugars that we eat. Glucose and sugar comes in 60 different names. So a lot of people don't even realize that they're eating sugar when they think they're eating something healthy, but it's hidden in some other name. And this one too is something that, as I mentioned before, there's this domino effect. So if you have high cortisol levels, all of a sudden your body wants to crave more sugar. And so you're going to store that sugar. And that's when we start to gain weight. Okay, so different symptoms related to high insulin or the sugar hormone is obviously you're craving sugar. You have a hard time skipping a meal. Okay, so you feel cranky and anxious when you skip meals. You get extra bloating. You have low energy, weight gain, hair loss, again, low sex drive, skin problems like acne and skin tags, and you're always hungry. Over time, this addiction to sugar can lead to things like excessive sugar that is stored as fat, pancreas exhaustion. That's because your pancreas is always working in overdrive to try and process this insulin. Digestive issues like a really bad gut flora because sugar feeds the bad bacteria within your digestive tract. And too little enzymes. Enzymes are what the body needs to be able to process the food, digest the food, and absorb the nutrients from the food. And then insulin resistance. This is scary. This is really scary because this leads to diabetes and low metabolism. Okay, now, there is a desired balance. Okay, we want to have a balance in all things. But if you want to snap a picture of this, you can too. This is just an overview. It's saying that estrogen dominance comes from things like environmental disruptors. High cortisol comes from things like chronic stress, and it lowers your progesterone. Insulin problems comes from sugar overloading. It stores fat. It definitely overloads the liver and leads to gut problems. Lots and lots of gut problems. Okay, that was question 1. Where do you store fat? Now, question 2 is what are your stressors? This one, I feel like women take this one and just come up with the obvious stressors. So these are the obvious ones, right? family, work, money, childcare, health. Those are the obvious stressors. But really, what are we looking at here? This is what I want you to really focus on. The fat storing in your body. Oh, Talina, you're so sweet. Yes, I will send you the recording. Bless your heart. Her baby keeps waking up, she said. So the fat you're storing in your body comes from other stressors, okay? Other hormonal imbalances occur from things like sleep deprivation, gut problems and digestive issues, heart hunger. Oh my goodness. I totally had this one when I was at my rock bottom. That sensation, like if I eat this food, I'm going to feel so warm and comforted. Food was like warmth to me. Kelly, bless your heart. Sorry, I was reading the comments. Kate, different food addictions, thinking about food as a therapeutic value, toxic overload. So that, again, thinking more about the endocrine disruptors, different inflammatory foods like trans fats and sugars. Obviously, we talked about red meat and hormones within the foods we're eating. Over-exercising. You guys, over-exercising causes so much stress. Even the thought of a woman thinking to herself, I have to work out every single day or 4 or 5 days a week, and I've got to get to the gym in the morning, I got to get on that treadmill for an hour, that causes the body stress, okay? So you need a balance in that as well. Feeling unfulfilled in life, different worries that we have, under eating. How many of you, and I can definitely raise my hand to this one, have ever felt like you are so busy during the day you don't even have time to eat, and you starve yourself? And then you get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I just got home and I need to feed my body. And so you overeat and your fridge is all of a sudden empty because you were so hungry. You ate all the things. Okay, that's also not good. And obviously self-esteem issues can lead to stress as well. Okay, now let's quickly go over this domino effect, because I think you saw the pattern when we went through those 3 different hormonal imbalances. But if you have high cortisol levels, that's what leads to you wanting the sugar. So that's going to lead to the high insulin. High insulin and sugar leads to inflammation and fat storage. That inflammation leads to high testosterone, which then gives you estrogen dominance, which gives you stress. So it's this whole thing that's related. It's like this big domino effect, and it's not fun. It's definitely not fun. So the only way for us to lower our estrogen, to lower our insulin, and lower our cortisol is by removing the triggers at the cellular level. This is huge. And so I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you do that so that you can switch on the fat burning hormones and switch off the fat storing hormones. Step 1, and I will email you these so you don't need to take a picture. Step 1, you're going to work on your stress resilience. Now, this might sound like total kumbaya, crazy Buddha. If you've never meditated before, you're going to think I'm nuts. But you don't need to make it that way. It can be as simple as plopping down on the floor on a pillow when you get up in the morning, sitting your seat right there on that pillow, sit in a very comfortable position with your legs crossed. You can have your arms open, you can have your arms crossed, however you decide to do it. What is comfortable to you is what's going to actually work. So you're practicing this meditation, this mindfulness, and this place in your life where you've carved out space for you to think and to leave your brain to be itself. Like when I don't have these moments where I'm clearing my day and I'm setting my day and I'm setting my intention and really setting these affirmations for myself in the morning, then my day does not go well. If you're jumping out of bed first thing in the morning, your feet hit the floor, you hear the kids wake up, or that alarm goes off and you have to go to work, immediately you're waking up with that cortisol just flowing through your body. And how long does it take for that to go down again? 12 hours. Okay. So think about if you plop down on the floor and for 5 minutes of your day, just right there in the morning, whether you pray to God, you talk to the universe, whatever it is, and you're just letting your feelings go. You're thinking about your day. You're being intentional about it. For me, all that I do is I visualize my day. I visualize, okay, on the docket today, I've got these things going on, and this is the way that I want them to go. Okay, being really intentional about that. I want this appointment to go like this. When I talk to Emily, I want this conversation to be like this. I want to be able to help this person, da, 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 da. Okay, you're setting it out so that when those things come, and let's say, because there are always curveballs, there are always things that are going to throw you off course, But what's awesome about that is that you will be in the mindset and you will have the ability to calm that anxiety because you've set the intention. Because it's okay. Things are always going to go awry, always. But as long as I wrote it down here, practice mindfulness daily and learn to mind your mind. So as long as you realize that 90% of everything we worry about actually never happens, then you're going to be set up for success. Okay, so just focus in on the things that bring you joy. Take a nice deep breath every morning. Allow the oxygen to really come in and provide more blood flow to your lungs and to your brain and to your body, and intentionally breathing and feeling your heartbeat, feeling your extremities, feeling your toes and your fingers. My favorite thing to do is actually to go outside in the morning without any socks or shoes on and just feeling the earth, feeling the grounding measure that the earth has on my body. Whether that sounds hokey pokey to you or not, it's the truth. Okay, studies can show it. If you don't believe me, Google it. It's called earthing. Earthing is a really incredible thing that you can do every day, whether it's with your kids or on your own. And you go outside and you connect, and you can feel more grounded and feel more centered in your day and more at peace with the things that are to come. And then when the stress comes, you can control it because you had that day set out on the right path. Okay, other things to help on stress resilience is finding a practice that really fits you and making sure that it's not someone else's practice. Because I know in the beginning for myself, I listened to Gabrielle Bernstein and her Kundalini meditations, and she would do it for like 20 minutes to 45 minutes. And that's not realistic for my life. It's not realistic even for my brain. I feel like I might fall asleep if it was that long. But I might get to that point where it works for me and it might not work for you. So just make sure that you do this in a way that's really focused on something that you can control. Okay, step 2. Step 2 is becoming very aware of your physical stressors. This is going to help you overcome so many of those triggers by bringing down your stress levels. So as long as you practice some form of exercise each day, you get your heart rate up, you, as I mentioned before, you're not over-exercising, you're doing everything in moderation, and sleep is so important. Sleep is number one, you guys. It's the restorative part of our day. It's when the body is actually able to process the hormonal waste that is coming out. If we do not sleep, or if we get less than 7 hours of sleep, we will retain a lot of that waste and it will continue with us. So those toxic levels, the bacteria, the fungus, the yeast, the overgrowth of all the things that we have in our system throughout the day will continue to build up, and you won't be able to rid yourself of it based on the fact that you're not sleeping enough hours during the night. And then also making sure with different food triggers that you eliminate some of those inflammatory foods that are high in sugar. Remember, sugar leads to high insulin. Drinking caffeine leads to high cortisol, different bad fats that you can avoid, and removing some hormonal disruptors. Okay, step 3 is my favorite. This one's eating on purpose. Eating on purpose, okay? Not just, you throw something in the toaster and you head out the door. It's preparing foods on Sundays, or maybe even twice a week. Or maybe every night after dinner, you take some of those leftovers and you put them in the fridge, and you make sure that you have a high, dense, nutritious meal for the next day that you can consume. My favorite thing to tell people is that you should be eating 30 different vegetables every single week. I'll say that again. You should be eating 30 different vegetables every single week, vegetables and fruit, okay, combined. So things like omega-3s are really important in your diet. Omega-3s are different fatty acids that your body needs to be able to process the inflammatory foods that we're consuming, or any inflammation, not just foods, but any inflammation in the body. Omega-3s can counteract the inflammation. Alliums are really good to consume. Things like onions, green onions, garlic. Garlic is so good for you. Crucifers, things like broccoli or cauliflower. Any of those really starchy vegetables too, like zucchini, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, obviously sweet potatoes. They're like God's gift to Lena. I love them so much. Leafy greens. I don't necessarily eat kale. I know kale had like this big popular time, but kale is actually kind of hard on my body to be able to process. So I love butterhead lettuce. I feel like butterhead lettuce is so smooth. It tastes really good. You can get it organic and it's not as expensive as the romaine. So I really, really love butterhead lettuce. Complex, slow carbs, those are the things I mentioned before. Oh, also potatoes. Potatoes, people always give potatoes a bad rap, but russet potatoes, golden potatoes, red potatoes, those are actually really good for you in moderation. And they're very grounding as well. And emotionally, they can bring a lot of comfort. Different powerful spices like parsley and cilantro and basil, those I consume every single week. I make sure I get them. I chop them up. Sometimes I freeze them if I got them in excess. One day I will have a garden and I won't need to buy them. Fiber-rich veggies. Any fiber-rich veggie is good. I actually have some pictures over here of fiber-rich veggies. So you can do beets, you can do Brussels sprouts, different clean proteins. And for me, I am currently not eating any meat, but I consume protein in other ways. You can actually get a lot of protein from fruits and veggies. The reason why people really truly want to eat protein and their bodies crave it is because it fills them up and it gives us energy. But what you have to understand is it's not necessarily the protein itself that fills us up. It's the fat within the protein that we're consuming that fills us up. So if you eat healthy fats like cashews or avocado oil, and then you consume that with something else that has a protein in it, even like a sweet potato or watermelon. Watermelon has a lot of protein in it. I eat watermelon every single day. It's very hydrating. The body has a hard time processing and digesting the water within watermelon quickly. So it actually hydrates you a lot better than water can, which is great, especially in the summertime here in DC where it's so humid and we're sweating all the time. Okay, awesome. So eating on purpose. Sorry, I'm going off on different tangents, but step 4. Yes, Julie, think about a gorilla, plant eaters. I love it. I'm so glad you're on the call. Step 4, support your elimination pathways. You guys, these last 2 steps are so crucial. They are the most important of all the steps. So if you have tuned out or if you have gotten up to get a drink, come back, sit down and listen to these ones because these 2 steps are what are going to help the very most. Okay. All of these things play a part in how we're going to feel and how we're going to eliminate some of those triggers. But these last 2 are absolutely crucial. So supporting your elimination pathways. Why is it important to support our liver and our stomach and our large intestines to be able to flush out fluids and toxic chemicals and all of that? Because the longer they're in there, the harsher they are on your system. In fact, I talked about this before, but your gut flora is just so important to be able to be balanced. The more positive bacteria you have within your digestive system, the better you're going to feel. There are actually more living microorganisms within your digestive tract than there are humans that have ever lived on planet Earth. So if you think about that, there's this like whole ecosystem going on down there. And if you have neglected it, or if you continue to feed it things that are negative, things like sugar, and it's having all the bad bacteria proliferate, it's very quickly going to affect all things in your body. More importantly, the brain. I'm sure many of you have heard of the brain-gut connection. It's a true thing. It's real. My husband works at a law office. He's a lawyer, and they help veterans. And a lot of times they come in with PTSD, and the doctors now are prescribing them probiotics simply to help balance out their microflora, and that's helping their PTSD and their mental health because there are more neurons and serotonin released within our digestive system than there are from our brain, which is really cool. So being able to support these elimination pathways with 2 specific things, probiotics, and a lot of people get caught up on which brand to buy. I have been a big fan of the doTERRA probiotics simply because they are really intentional about how they encapsulate them. Probiotics are very, very vulnerable to light and temperature. So if you were to consume a probiotic from like a yogurt, or maybe it's even in a solid form, or I've seen probiotics come in so many different forms, shapes, and sizes. And the sad thing is that your body's not getting any of that. By the time it gets down to your hind gut, 99.999% of them are already dead. So you're just wasting money. With the doTERRA ones, it's really cool because they double encapsulate them in a protective measure of prebiotics. And the prebiotics are actually what become the food that the probiotics feed off of. And there's also like a UV protection around the probiotics too. If you were to look at the pill, it's double encapsulated. And I like that extra protective measure because it protects the probiotic, but I also can feel it work really quickly. I'd like to take my probiotic right before I go to bed with an 8-ounce glass of water. Probiotics work really well when you're laying down flat. They'll still work throughout the day, but that's just the way that I prefer to take them. And then the second thing is metabolic enzymes. These are really important based off of where we live. Okay, right now in the United States, we are, I would say 75 to 85% of all of our produce is sourced from somewhere else. It's not from where you live locally. And so that's really hard on our body too, because it's picked prematurely. It doesn't have all the nutrients within the food. And so you need enzymes to be able to digest the food and also have the nutrients within that food bless your body. Because if you're eating a banana, especially if it's green, right? If you're eating a green banana, your body is not going to be able to digest it very well. You're probably going to get a stomach ache and you're not going to get much of that potassium in your body. So if you take a digestive enzyme with the foods that you're eating, no matter what you're cooking, your body is going to be able to process it a whole lot better and you're going to get the nutrients from it, the vitamins and the supplements from it. Okay. And that being said, on this last tip here, taking a whole food supplement is so important. It is so important. Because I already said this before, but you're getting foods out of season from God knows where, and you know without a shadow of a doubt that the soil is overpopulated. We have had so many things happen within the soil system. My dad's a farmer, and he talks to me all the time about the lack of quality of the soil now, just because there's this output with all the different testing that they do on the soil. It's just really depleted the nutrient content of the soil. And so just based on where we live, we are all depleted in vitamins, supplements, and trace minerals. I lived for a time in Italy, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, and food just tastes different there. It tastes different. It really does. And it's because they have things that are locally grown. And when you buy something that is locally grown, it's going to contain the nutrients that you need to be able to live and thrive within that area geographically. So the doTERRA supplements are bar none the best I've seen. And, you know, as a nutritionist, I get a lot of people looking at me with different supplements, and they'll come with like a bottle and show me the back of the bottle. And they're all excited to say like, look what I'm getting. I'm getting my vitamin A, B, C, B12 and all the things. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's awesome. I'm so glad you're taking that. But, right, there's always a but. And the but is really that you'll notice on the back of most supplements, it'll say 2,000 to 5,000% of your daily intake of that supplement. And first and foremost, your body cannot process that many supplements at one time. Okay, it's impossible. And so what happens is it goes into your liver, and you notice when you go to the restroom, you have this expensive pee, right? It's this bright colored yellow or bright colored green, and it's gnarly. And you're like, why did I just take those supplements when they just came out so quickly? You didn't absorb them in your body because it was way too much for your body to take at one time. The reason they do that is because they mimic that vitamin or trace mineral in a lab to look like and feel like, but it's actually artificial. The doTERRA supplements are from their whole food form. And because they're from their whole food form, the body recognizes it as nutrition and puts it to work very quickly, which is just really cool. It's cool that we can take something and know that it works so quickly. My husband's a huge advocate for these too. I've got my whole family on them and hundreds of different clients that are obsessed with these supplements. So if you're curious about these or you want to know more, you can Google it. You can Google it for sure. But what I would say is just real quick to touch on these three specifically. The first one is the Microplex BMC. You'll see it right here. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but it's the one at the top. And that one's the multivitamin. Okay, those are all the A, B, C, B12, CoQ10, magnesium, fiber, potassium, all the things. But the middle one, this is your XE omega. This is going to be your DHA fatty acids and fish oil. And as I mentioned before, you need that to counteract the inflammation of the omega-3s, but more importantly, you need omega-3s for brain function, all the big systems in the body, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the stomach. And then the last one here is Alpha CRS Plus. This is what we call the holy grail at our house. This one needs like a moment of silence. It's that good. It's all antioxidants, and they're antioxidants from its food form and essential oils, and it gives me energy and keeps me healthy. So that to me is worth every penny of these supplements. Okay, now to get to the best part, and first let me just thank you so much for being here. This hormonal health kit is probably the best way to get started with doTERRA. And when I say get started, there's a way that you can actually become a member or become a wholesale customer where you have 12 months access to all the products from doTERRA for 25% off. And typically that's $35, okay? $35 to enroll with a membership for your first year. After that, it goes down to $25. But that being said, I designed this hormonal health kit based on the class tonight with the things that I feel are most important for you to start now. And it's with the 3 supplements we just talked about. So this lifelong vitality pack. And the nice thing about doTERRA is they let you bundle and save. So if you were to buy just this Alpha CRS Plus, it's $69 just for that one. The one I said is our holy grail. But if you add on these 2 extra supplements, it actually is only $10 more. So it goes up to $79. And then typically the Terrazyme, the digestive enzymes, are $37.50. But when you bundle them, it goes down to $20. And the same thing with the probiotic. People are always astonished by how inexpensive our probiotics are. They're normally $34.50 with your 25% off. But when you bundle it with the Lifelong Vitality Pack, it goes down again to $20. I also have included in here this, oh, here it is right here, this Clary Calm. You can see it in the picture, but here's the one here that I use. I use this daily to balance my hormonal health. You can rub it on your abdomen. You can rub it also on your inner right ankle. If you're familiar with essential oils and aromatherapy, this is just a really wonderful blend of essential oils to help balance your hormone levels and keep cramps and migraines and things like that at bay. I've even been known to like put it on my breasts when I have sore breasts. So it does all the things. And that's also included in this kit. This kit will include the 25% off for a year, the Lifelong Vitality Pack, the Terrazyme, and the probiotic. And the nice thing about this too is that this Lifelong Vitality Pack of supplements has a 30-day money-back guarantee with doTERRA. So you can return all bottles empty to them, having taken it at a full dose every day for 30 days, and doTERRA will give you a full refund. I do want to forewarn you, though, that the returns department is like less than 0.0001%. So if you're going to get on these, just know that you're going to love them, and you'll be a part of an awesome community of people, women, families, all around the globe who are thinking of themselves first and taking care of their health from the root and up, right? Taking care of our body on a fundamental level and thinking about the functionality of our body versus how we're going to react to something, right? We don't want to live that Walgreens lifestyle anymore where we're reacting every time we get sick. We want to be able to prevent those things and think about it in a preventative healthcare mindset. And that being said, I'm going to open it up to Q&As, but I just love this quote from Gabrielle Bernstein. I let go of my need to control and let the universe do her thing. That's my invitation to you tonight, is to let go of those things that are holding you back and to really hone in and harness the things that you know you can do well and that you can do better at. And there's no need to be perfect. There's no need to be like anybody else. But if you can feel better, if you can eliminate some of those triggers, if you can be more intentional about how to relieve some of that stress in your life, you're going to feel a ton better. Oh, last but not least, this is the best part I forgot to share, is you paid $15 plus some tax for this class tonight. And so I will reimburse anybody who gets started tonight with the Hormonal Health Kit. And that being said, I'm going to unmute you. I don't even know what time it is. Oh, that was like 50-minute class. That was pretty good. Under an hour. Okay, I'm unmuting everybody, and I would love for you to feel comfortable enough to ask questions. Hey, Madison, I didn't even see you on there until just now. Hi. Hello, hello. Unmute yourself, ask away. I'm here for you for the next little while.
Lena, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think about the phytoestrogen complex? Do you use that?
Yeah, you know what? I have used it in the past. I think that would be sort of a case-by-case scenario. And if you get started with me, then you can understand a little bit more about that. We would get real deep and look at what specifically your needs are. And if you needed more estrogen, then we could talk about that path. But if you're thinking real foundational, this is a place I would definitely get started with the Lifelong Vitality Pack.
Okay.
Yeah.
The phytoestrogen is really great too at helping balance out just the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone in your system. Mm-hmm. It helps to kind of negate the xenoestrogens. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeling like you might be having too much estrogen in your system or too much testosterone, it's really good too at helping kind of mediate all of that.
Yeah, and this is good. My biggest suggestion is for people getting started to always start with the Lifelong Vitality Pack and then go from there. Because if you start with all of it, you don't know which one is helping you and which isn't. And so like a solid 30 days of one thing and then readjusting, readdressing, kind of talking together again and figuring out how to move forward so we can add other things in or not. Maybe it's helping. Maybe you can go down to half a dose instead of a full dose. So there's lots of different ways to modify it.
Super smart. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, I love these comments. Terrazyme saved me during my last pregnancy. Heck yes. When your smooth muscle tissues relaxes, everything slows down. It's so true. It is so true. I feel like that is one of the biggest issues with being pregnant. Clary Calm keeps me alive. I love that medicine. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to click the stop record button. Hi, Brooke. I see you. And if you were too shy to ask on the recording, you can ask. Now let me move this little guy.